We don't have that here. Here, we're equal, men and women alike. What we do for the benefit of all.
Dune Part 3 just got a super interesting update from Hans Zimmer. If you don't know, he's the genius behind the epic soundtrack for both Dune movies, and he even won an Oscar for the first one. The 2024 sequel was a hit, bagging 5 Oscar noms and winning 2, Best Sound and Best Visual Effects. Sadly, it didn't snag Best Picture. Anora took that one. But with all that success, it's no surprise Denis Villeneuve and his crew are diving straight into the third movie. So Zimmer popped up on the Happy Sad Confused podcast and casually dropped some info about the Dune Messiah adaptation. He confirmed that Part 3 is happening sooner rather than later, and even mentioned that Villeneuve was literally on a plane back to Canada at that moment. When the host asked if Zimmer had started working on the score, he played it cool saying maybe. Classic Hans. Now about that release date, nothing official yet, but Warner Brothers has already slotted Villeneuve's next big project for December 18, 2026. They haven't outright said it's Dune Messiah, but with Zimmer saying he's heading back to Arrakis soon, it's looking more and more likely. And if that's the case, it means we're getting a solid 2.5-year gap between Part 2 and Messiah, which lines up with the time frame between the first 2 movies. Zimmer didn't spill too much about where they are in the process, but Villeneuve flying around could mean he's out location scouting or handling some pre-production stuff. That's a pretty good sign that they're on track for the 2026 release. Since these movies rely heavily on insane VFX, they'll need a lot of post-production time, so filming needs to start soon if they want to meet that deadline. With how well Dune Part 2 did, Warner Brothers would be kinda dumb not to keep the hype going and push hard for Part 3. Villeneuve is still kinda underrated, and now's the perfect time to keep the momentum going. Zimmer's little tease isn't just some random comment. It's basically confirmation that we'll be back on Arrakis by late 2026. And let's be real, that ending to Part 2 was wild. Paul Atreides just took down the Emperor, defeated Feyd-Rautha, and claimed the Imperium, setting off a holy war across the galaxy. He went full dictator mode, and it's both terrifying and kind of awesome. Dune Messiah jumps ahead a few years, with Paul now ruling the Imperium and leading the Fremen warriors across the universe. The whole story revolves around him trying to secure an heir, which is complicated because he's torn between his duties to Princess Irulan, his political wife, and his actual love for Chani. This whole struggle between obligation and personal desire is the heart of Messiah, and it puts Paul in an impossible position. Speaking of Chani, Villeneuve has already made some big changes to her character compared to the books. In Herbert's version, she fully believes in Paul's role as the Chosen One and sticks by his side throughout his rise to power. But in Part 2, she's straight up not vibing with Paul's thirst for conquest. That's why she bounces on a sandworm at the end of the movie, which is a huge departure from the book, where she stays with him despite his marriage to Irulan. This change is going to make Messiah super interesting because now their relationship is in a completely different place. Irulan, played by Florence Pugh, is another key player in Messiah. She's the daughter of the old emperor and Paul's new wife, but their marriage is really just for political reasons. In Part 2, she was already playing some serious Bene Gesserit mind games, manipulating her father's downfall and securing her place in the New Order. But in Messiah, things get way more complicated. Paul needs an heir, but he wants to have kids with Chani, not Irulan. Meanwhile, Irulan is basically stuck in a loveless marriage, knowing she's just there to keep her family's legacy alive. If Villeneuve keeps going with the Dune saga, she could even become the main character of the series. Then there's Alia Atreides, Paul's sister, who got a tiny cameo in Part 2 played by Anya Taylor-Joy in Paul's vision. She's a huge deal in Messiah because she's basically carrying on House Atreides' legacy while also getting tangled in some dark, secretive political schemes. In the book, she's super powerful and has all the knowledge of the Bene Gesserit packed into her mind, which makes her one of the most fascinating characters moving forward. One of the best things about the Dune books is how they cover massive time spans, following generations of this family across decades. Paul is just one piece of the puzzle, and characters like Alia and Irulan help show the bigger picture of how power shifts over time. This long-term storytelling is what makes the series so epic. Reverend Mother Gaius Mohiam, played by Charlotte Rampling, is also going to play a major role in Messiah. She's been pulling the strings behind the scenes since the first movie, training Lady Jessica and testing Paul with the Gom Jabbar. Her whole mission has been to ensure the birth of the Kwisatz Haderach, a super powerful male Bene Gesserit. But in Messiah, she starts to question if Paul is actually the real deal, which puts her at odds with him in a big way. Later Dune books even reveal that Paul might not have been the true Kwisatz Haderach, Brazier. Gaius is one of those characters who always seems to be in control, but in Messiah, she's forced to confront the possibility that everything she's worked for might have been a mistake. That tension is going to make for some intense storytelling in the next movie. At this point, it's clear that Dune Messiah is going to be a totally different kind of movie from the first two. If Villeneuve sticks with the changes he made in Part 2, we're in for some major surprises. Paul's reign isn't going to be all glory and triumph. Messiah is all about the consequences of his actions and the power struggles that follow. With so many complex characters and shifting alliances, this movie is shaping up to be something really special. Take Children of Dune, for instance. The story expands beyond Paul, shifting focus to his children, Leto II and Ganima, and dives deeper into themes of destiny, power, and transformation. Then there's God Emperor of Dune, where things go from epic to, well, surreal. Leto II, Paul's son, merges with the sandworms and becomes a colossal, near-immortal being, ruling over humanity for thousands of years. It's a fascinating evolution of the Dune universe, but also a hard sell for mainstream audiences, especially when much of the storytelling shifts into dense philosophical discourse rather than action-driven drama. As the timeline jumps further into the future with each book, the continuity becomes even harder to maintain, making Villeneuve's decision to stop at Dune Part 3 feel like a logical endpoint. But even if this is the last film in Villeneuve's adaptation, Dune Part 3 itself is shaping up to be one of the most crucial chapters of the entire saga. By the time Dune Messiah begins, Paul Atreides isn't just a prophesied figure anymore, he's the emperor of the known universe. His rule sparks an overwhelming religious fervor, with the Fremen waging a brutal war in his name, leading to the deaths of billions. Despite his power, Paul finds himself trapped by destiny, desperately trying to alter the course of humanity while fending off assassination attempts from rival factions. His rule is further complicated by his marriage to Princess Irulan, a political move to legitimize his reign. However, Irulan, loyal to her noble bloodline, works against him in secret, attempting to prevent Chani from bearing Paul an heir. As Paul battles external threats, he also wrestles with the terrifying consequences of absolute power and the dangers of blind faith. This makes Dune Part 3 not just a sequel, but a pivotal moment in the Dune saga, one that explores the weight of prophecy, sacrifice, and the inescapable grip of fate. Villeneuve may be stepping away, but with Dune Part 3, he's ensuring the franchise ends on a high note, right before things get even more complex. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.